Despite a two-game winning streak, we're still waiting on a long-term quarterback decision from Dave Canales. What will be that deciding factor? I'll tell you right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, I'm right here on the show answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me on Twitter at Julian Council. A follow is not required. Get those questions in for tomorrow's edition of the weekly Wednesday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is sponsored by Ultimate GM. Use the promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. I am back home in Charlotte, already missing Munich and all of the wonderful people I got to meet throughout the week there in Munich as Panthers got that 20-17 overtime win thanks to that Eddie Pinheiro 36-yard field goal on Sunday afternoon at the Allianz Arena, and got some great things to bring back, like this book about the Carolina Panthers that listeners Kai and Moritz wrote and signed also, which was so nice of them. I know Moritz said he's going to be in Charlotte in a couple of weeks, so excited to go see him again and really grow that friendship, as it was so awesome to meet all you guys. Give a lot of y'all shout out to the end of Sunday's show. So if you did not listen to the end of yesterday's show, go back, listen to all of it, as I really appreciated hanging out with everybody. Saw Nick again, who's from Wilkesboro, on my flight back to Charlotte. 9 hours and 15 minutes, y'all. That was a lot. Watched the entire fourth season of Outer Banks, which remains one of the more ridiculous shows out there on Netflix, but I loved every second of it. And if you've seen it, I still think that one of the more ridiculous things is the ferry to Chapel Hill in season 1. That is just not something that can happen. Now, you have to suspend reality for a large part of that show if you're going to be able to watch it and enjoy it. But that is the one thing that still I cannot get over when watching it. So long flight back home. I'm tired, but I just came back from watching Dave Canales' press conference on Monday following that win against the Giants. And we're still waiting on him to say whether it's going to be Andy Dalton or Bryce Young the rest of the way here in 2024. The Panthers 3-7. They're heading into a bye week. They've won 2 straight games with Bryce being the starting quarterback. But we do go back to a couple weeks ago before Andy Dalton got into the car accident where he sprained his right thumb. Dave Canales was steadfast that Andy Dalton gave them the best opportunity to win. But we've seen the last 2 weeks, with the help of Bryce Young as their quarterback, the Panthers have won 2 games. So I'm wondering what is going to be the factor for Dave Canales when he goes and evaluates and takes in all the information, as he's continually said over the last couple of weeks when he's taken this decision week to week. And of course, currently, as they're sitting into a bye, they don't need to make a decision right now. They probably don't even need to make a decision next Monday, at least publicly to the media. The Wednesday coming up next Wednesday would probably be the time where, like this past week, heading into Germany, Dave Canales would announce who his quarterback is going to be. But for our sanity, I would love for him just to come out and say it's either going to be Bryce or it's going to be Andy Dalton. Now, looking at it, I feel like the deciding factor is just going to be how the pass game has performed this season under each quarterback and just where it can go in the final 7 games of the season when you look at all of it. And I understand that on Sunday that Dave said that Bryce is making a statement to all of us. And that was really positive to hear, considering a lot of the times when he's been given an opportunity to praise Bryce Young, he has not done it that much. Now, the last couple of weeks, he has talked about how Bryce has been decisive, how he's made the good decisions, how he is getting a lot of respect and he is making a statement. But when asked before about Bryce, when Andy was the guy, and even after the Denver game, didn't get a ton from Dave Canales, but post-Saints win, post-Giants win, You heard some of the things that I think a lot of us at least wanted to hear from him when given the opportunity to say something positive about Bryce Young. But the one quote that really stood out to me on Monday after Dave Canales, when he was speaking to the media, was this quote: "We're getting closer to a foundation that we can build. Certainly in our passing game, there are things that we can improve upon." And when you look at the pass game, that is the one area, especially on Sunday, that left a lot to be desired, just when you look at the game in total, but also looking at the stats. And you can't just look at the stats and say, okay, that's either good, that's either bad. You got to look at the whole game, the context, and everything in totality to truly understand how things are playing out with these two quarterbacks. Now, the fortunate thing is Panthers have played 10 games so far. 5 of those have been started by Andy, 5 have been started by Bryce Young. So you can at least look at those sample sizes and be able to play the comparison game as they're now in this bye week. The Panthers are 1-4 of Andy Dalton. They're 2-3 with Bryce Young. QB wins is not a stat, but understand 1-4 of Andy, who Dave Canales says gives him the best opportunity to win, at least the last time Andy Dalton was healthy. That's what he was saying way back a couple weeks ago, where now with Bryce Young, the Panthers are 2-3. And continually, Dave's been asked, who gives you the best opportunity to win? And he is not willing to answer that question as of right now. For the season, Andy Dalton has completed 66.3% of his passes for 989 yards to lead the team in passing yardage. Also leads the team with 7 touchdown passes and has 6 interceptions. Bryce Young has completed 60.1% of his passes for 820 yards, 4 touchdowns, and also 6 interceptions. So Andy has been more accurate in terms of completion percentage, and this is not adjusted completion percentage, which is a better barometer of true completion percentage, because there are drops, as we've seen from some guys. We've seen both of these players overthrow the deep ball a number of times so far this season. That's just been an area the Panthers have not necessarily been able to connect on as much as I think you and I and everyone in that locker room and that coaching staff would like to see them do moving forward. So also looking at it, more yards for Andy as far as passing yards, more touchdowns, same amount of interceptions that these two have. The Panthers, when looking at their passing totals so far this year, the 3 highest have come when Andy Dalton has started. Overall, the Panthers only have 4 games with 200-plus passing yards, one of them belonging to Bryce Young. That came in that Denver loss where most of those yardage, it felt like, were all in garbage time when the offense was finally open up to Bryce. Before that, felt like Dave Canales was not willing to ask him to throw the ball down the field. There's a lot of short route concepts, and I was really puzzled by what the overall game plan was on that Sunday in Denver. When you look at the Panthers' lowest passing totals, 3 of the 4 came in games where Bryce Young started, including the win on Sunday against the Giants. So Bryce has at least shown that he can operate an offense, not have the highest passing total that you would expect to see from a winning quarterback, and still get the job done, which is what they did on Sunday in that game. But really, when you look at just the current context of situation here in Carolina at quarterback, the Bryce is making a statement to all of us, quote from Dave Canales on Sunday, the back-to-back performances Bryce Young has put together against the Saints in that win and against the Giants on Sunday in that win are, in my mind, the best 2 back-to-back performances he's had so far in his young career as Carolina Panthers starting quarterback. He was only 16-26 for 171 yards and a touchdown versus New Orleans. But when you watch the game, you could tell, all right, that's a different Bryce Young. I loved his toughness. When he was trying to get to the goal line and score that touchdown, I loved his decisiveness with his decision-making when he just let it rip on that 3rd and 10 to Xavier Legette. You also saw when he saw the pressure coming, just toss it up there, the anticipation to Jatavion Sanders. You saw the scramble also on Sunday in that game where he had the first touchdown throw to Jatavion Sanders in his career, that first catch rather for Jatavion Sanders. You saw that athleticism in the last couple of weeks in Bryce that you don't necessarily get from Andy Dalton at this point in time in his career, as he's 37 years old. Was a good athlete in the past, still is a good athlete today, but not the kind of athlete that Bryce Young can be for you at the quarterback spot for the Panthers currently, and of course going into the future next year if he maintains to be their guy. So you cannot discount what he's been able to do last 2 weeks. Like Sunday, 15-25, 126 yards, touchdown. It doesn't stand out and really jump out to you. Well, you think back to that 3rd and 8 Panthers got to have it. They're trying to run out the clock. If they give the Giants ball back at that point in time, there's about 3:23 left. And Bryce throws the best throw that he had all day long on a corner out to Xavier Legette for 13 yards and a first down. And if he does not convert that and put that ball in the money, and if Xavier does not catch it, the Giants get the ball back. And we saw that this defense, which I still feel like had their best performance of the year on Sunday against, yes, Daniel Jones, not a great Giants offense, but you got to praise those guys considering all they've been through so far this season and all the criticism that I have given them and that you have given them, which has been earned. Understanding the injuries and the situation that they've had to go through so far this season. People wanted Ejiro Evero fired for weeks, and his defense went out there healthier and I thought played a good game, but they were giving up some yardage there at the end. And they were so close to where if there's another minute on that clock, are we talking about the Giants coming back and winning that game and the Panthers blowing a 17-7 fourth quarter lead? Because I think we may have been talking about that in that situation, but Bryce making that throw kind of saved the Panthers on Sunday. So I wonder, just going back to that quote, certainly in our pass game, there are things that we need to improve upon. Will that be the reason Dave Canales goes back to Andy Dalton if he so chooses to do that? Or will he look at the last 2 weeks and the statement that Bryce Young is making in deciding that let's continue to allow Bryce to make that statement and understand, too, that they're a developmental organization, as he said, when they bench Bryce Young. And that Bryce also has 2 more years left on his rookie deal. And the hope was 18 months ago, he would be the franchise quarterback here in Carolina. Andy Dalton's not going to be. And if they go back to Andy, it's just another sign pointing to they're done with Bryce Young. I just don't think you can make that decision and then bring back Bryce in 2025 and expect him to be your quarterback, especially the way that he's been able to lead this team the last 2 weeks. But I do wonder if just the way the pass game has gone so far this season, knowing that it's not like Bryce has been lighting it up as far as just the passing yardage numbers the last 2 weeks in those wins. Does Dave Canales look at the totality of the situation similar and not apples to apples as Mike Tomlin looked at the pass game with Justin Fields compared to Russell Wilson and think that he can get more out of the more experienced veteran quarterback than he can out of the young guy that a lot of people in Pittsburgh are saying, got to keep Fields. A lot of people here in Charlotte, including myself, are saying you got to keep Bryce Young. But is that the best thing for the offense as far as what they can be overall and meet their ceiling? We'll see. I think it's pretty simple. Keep Bryce. Why put back Andy? That's just one thing I'm looking at, man, the pass game. And is that why Dave Canales maybe is still mulling it over, or is it gamesmanship yet again? We'll find out probably not until next Wednesday when he'll likely tell us who that quarterback is going to be. About the rest of the game on Sunday, Dave talked about the offensive line play, gave an update on Jadavion Sanders and also on Miles Sanders. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Hey, Panther fans, remember our great partner, Ultimate Pro Football GM? Well, they're back, and they have added an amazing new game mode. I need to tell you about the game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory. Now has a new head coach career mode. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, and hiring coaching staff, now you also get to call offensive plays during games as well. Additionally, you'll dig the new tools you can work with, such as individual training camps and upgraded negotiation system. So this fun and realistic game just got a lot better. If you already have it installed, be sure to do an update so you can try out the new mode. If you don't have it yet, download it right now. It's a must-have for all football fans. I love it, and I know you will too. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On fans like you. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it as this perk will jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you want in creating a dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, do live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Speaking of bets, beginning of the season, 5.5, right? That was the team total for the Carolina Panthers as far as their over-under wins. Now at 3 wins away from tripling that win total, which we talked about doing at the beginning of the season, may happen. So if you got that ticket, good for you. If you don't have it yet, maybe go out there and try to get it over at FanDuel. All you got to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Panthers, Dave Canales, Carolina Panthers head coach, has a decision to make at quarterback, which he's not willing to let us know about, at least right now. Maybe not going to find out next Monday. I think we'll probably find out next Wednesday. There's really no benefit to the Panthers from a competitive advantage to let us know now here on November 12th, but it'd be nice just from the sake of we're tired of this being a weekly conversation and these questions being asked every week. But Dave Canales apparently is not tired of being asked about this and this being a weekly conversation. I suppose it gives me something to talk about, but I would love to have something new to talk about instead. But we'll continue to cover it here on the show. Some other things that Dave Canales had to point out on Monday after reviewing the film. And from my understanding, the Panthers, and I was talking to people after, they did not realize that they would fly back immediately. Yeah, they're going back. I talked to Darren Gant of Panthers.com, who was able to fly back with the team. He was saying they're going to get back at 3 a.m. And Dave Canales spoke to the media at 2:30, as he typically does on Mondays. And I was really jealous. I would have preferred to have been back at 3 a.m. last night, opposed to getting back at 4:15 this afternoon. And it's okay. I'm good. I actually don't feel as tired as I thought I would, as it's 8:26 on Monday night as I'm recording this show with you, or for you, whatever. We're all in it together, of course. But going to what he actually had to say and no longer putzing around like I'm doing right now. Offensive line play. It has been so much more improved this season than it was a year ago. We got the opportunity on Friday to go over to the Bayern Munich Academy to watch the Panthers practice, as they typically do on Fridays, and then to speak to Dave Canales. Actually, after the main press conference that you would have seen streamed, we got to speak to him for a couple minutes outside in the freezing cold. And I asked him just about, he wasn't here last year, as has to be a caveat when it comes to a lot of these questions, as we look back at last year for folks that have been around and we compare it to this season. And I was telling him, I mean, this year we have not really seen a drop off. When you've seen Chandler come in, he played well. When you've seen Brady come in, he's played well. Same thing with Cade Mays. I think Josh Stein maybe to a lesser extent, but still, you've had 4 different guys come in and start and play significant minutes, snaps, and they have played pretty well. It's not been a complete disaster. And he just pointed out just how Joe Gilbert rather, and Harold Goodwin, and then Keeley, I cannot say his last name. And there was another coach who were all out there and have really helped out this offensive line, where 4 guys, 4 different coaches, and they specialize where they have one coach working with the centers, one with the guards, one with the tackles, and the other coach helping out all over on the offensive line. And I had asked him, is that something that you saw from Pete Carroll back in Seattle? Is that where you picked it up? And he said, no, it's just something that he wanted to do. And I personally love that Dave Canales has put that much thought into a group that has been really one of the major weaknesses on this team. It's either been the offensive line or the quarterback for Carolina over the last 5-6 years, really, since Cam Newton hasn't been here. It's either been quarterback play's been terrible or offensive line play's been terrible. And a lot of times it's just been both, like we saw a year ago. But he gave them a shout out, gave everyone on the offensive line, the coaching staff, a shout out for only allowing 1 sack in the game. And that 1 sack was on the opening drive. Now, Brian Burns, he did get it. Well, you watched it. I'm sitting there. That was a big chunk of grass, of turf that came out of Bryce Young's foot. He slipped on that play. Burns was there, of course, but if Bryce doesn't slip, he can get rid of the football. He can dirt it. He can throw it away, and there would not have been a sack on that play. So that was more so Bryce slipping than it was Brian Burns making a great play or the offensive line giving up a sack. I don't think that was a sack. If anything, I think it's on the quarterback, I suppose, because he slipped, and that's not necessarily fair, but I don't think the offensive line should be attributed with that sack on that play. And Dave Canales was asked about the field conditions, because a couple of years ago in Munich, when the Seahawks, when he was still there, and also the Buccaneers, which is funny because that was the team he went to the next year, played, there was some concerns about the field conditions, and he said that they were good compared to 2 years ago. And the only guy I really felt like slipped was Bryce, because he slipped on that one play. He slipped on the touchdown throw to Jonathon Sanders. Other than that, didn't seem to be that big of an issue from my vantage point sitting up there watching the game. But looking at just the Panthers offensive line this season, PFF has had them at points of times in the top 5 or in top 10 of their pass blocking stat. They're 11th. They did not grade this offensive line highly on Sunday, even though I thought they played well pass blocking wise. ESPN, and this is a stat that's not updated yet because they have not completed week 10 as of this recording. It's 27th in ESPN's pass block win rate. I think they've been a lot better than that so far this season. Just looking at the PFF grades from Sunday's game, Robert Hunt, Taylor Moton, Damian Lewis were the 3 highest graded players on offense. Cade Mays was the 6th highest graded player. Then Brady Christensen was down there at 16th. That's awesome. Hunt, you paid him $100 million. He's been good for you. Taylor Moton coming back healthy. And he looked kind of banged up a couple times in that game, where I know there's one drive where they're coming out the field where I don't know whether he was frustrated with he was probably, I think it was a 3 and out, or if he was just banged up, but he was kind of laboring off. But he played well in that game again. Damian Lewis played well. Like, they invested on the offensive line this offseason, and it's paid massive dividends, especially when you saw the run game, Chuba Hubbard. And that was the best running game we've seen from Chuba. And I kept getting the stat wrong. It was 28 carries for Chuba for, I believe, 100, and I'm picking it up right now, 53 yards. I kept saying 27 for 151. So my mistake there on that on Sunday. Just want to correct that on today's show. But the O-line's played well, and it's refreshing to not see a quarterback get destroyed all season long, like we've seen in the past. Jonathon Sanders did not play. I thought that he was going to play as it was trending towards that. And we had talked about this over the last couple of weeks. It didn't seem like that was something the Panthers needed to rush. Like, they obviously had to make a decision last week of whether to activate him from the non-football injury list. He had the practice window open up. They had to make a decision last Wednesday, and they did. And that did not mean that they had to play him. But just from everything, it kind of sounded like with Dave Canales, they were going to play him. And we were trying to see what was going to happen to the trade deadline with Miles Sanders. If he was traded away, then it would make even more sense. But Jonathon Sanders out there. Why do I keep saying Jonathon Sanders? Jonathon Brooks. I wrote down Jonathon Sanders. Jonathon Brooks out there. JT Sanders, Jonathon Brooks. My God. Jonathon Brooks out there again, your boy just got off a 9-hour flight, and my body clock at this point in time is 2:32 German time. So forgive me. You know who I'm talking about. Well, Jonathon Brooks, he said, quote, took in a lot of factors, watched him progress throughout the week, and didn't think that it was time yet. And I'll mention that they have 2 weeks. They have this week, they have next week to get him in shape and see how things go. Also, with Miles Sanders, who has an ankle/foot injury, they don't have a timeline. He was seeing a specialist on Monday. I saw Miles after the game in the locker room, just asked him quickly, how you feeling? He said good. He was in a boot. So we'll see what that's going to be, if it's significant, if he's going to go on IR. I mean, that's going to be something where Jonathon Brooks obviously is going to come in and make an impact. And we'll probably talk more about what the impact he could make will be later on this week. But when we were talking, because with the ACL, that happened last November. And now it's been about a year. I don't know what date that happened on off the top of my head. But the Panthers didn't have to necessarily throw him out there against Saints or in Munich. I felt like for a while, Kansas City after the bye made the most sense. And I thought maybe even too for a guy like DJ Wonnum, who missed so much time that they may want to wait. Now, the fact that he's actually played in the NFL makes it a lot easier to come back and be ready for the speed of the game, where Jonathon Brooks has never played at this game speed before at the professional football level. So they're giving him more time to get in shape. And 2 different situations with both those players, as we all should understand after hearing what happened with DJ Wonnum and what we know about Jonathon Brooks coming off of that ACL. So a couple updates there from Dave Canales on Monday that will be important moving forward. The bye week, Panthers won 2 in a row. They're 3-7, only 3 games back in the NFC South. That's what somebody brought up to me. They'll still think that's a little big of a lead with 7 games left in the season, but does it come at a good time, or is it coming at a bad time? We'll talk about it here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Football season is back, and the best way to get to games this fall is with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. It's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. For the first time since the 2022 season, the Carolina Panthers have won back-to-back games. And for the first time since the beginning of the 2021 season, the Carolina Panthers have won back-to-back games on back-to-back weeks in the NFL. Back then, winning week 2 against Jameis Winston and the Saints in week 3 in Houston on that Thursday night, where Sam Darnold played excellent in the second half. Fortunately, the Panthers lost J.C. Horn and Christian McCaffrey in that second half. So a costly second half for that team that really kind of derailed where they're going to go the rest of the year. And in 2022, beat the brakes off of the Lions. And that's the last time we've seen the Detroit Lions not play good football. I know Jared Goff threw 5 picks apparently on Sunday, which, wow. And they still found a way to win that game. The last time we saw the Lions not look good was when Steve Wilkes and company put it on them on the ground, the best offensive performance in the franchise's history. Then they had the bye week, came back on the road, got a win against Seattle. That was the last time we saw back-to-back wins, but the last time we saw back-to-back wins on back-to-back weeks was 2021. So that just illustrates how things have not been the best lately, but the times right now, as far as the good times, they're rolling for Carolina. It was an awesome experience in Munich. Again, love seeing everybody who is overseas, who supports the show. Thank you so much for coming up to say hello. Thank you so much for supporting me. And I hate there's a couple people who DM me being like, hey, I wish I could have seen you. We'll make it happen. I know somebody I think somebody was there for their honeymoon, which we had talked about this, I think maybe back in the spring or summer, whenever it was. And we didn't get together, but congratulations on the nuptials. But also, they live here in North Carolina, so we can hang out at some point in time. And I got to do that at some point, just go out there and try and see more of you guys who are here locally, as typically I'm at home. Now, that was the first time for me going to a game as the media since I've been doing this. Now, back in 2019, when I worked at WFNZ, I went to all the home games. And that was fine. And I didn't have a podcast to do right away after the game. So it was a lot easier to go sit there in the press box, watch the game, and then like go home afterwards. And then 2020 wasn't doing the coverage. I was doing the 704 podcast. If there's any people who are OGs who listened to that before I started doing Locked On Panthers in 2021. And it didn't really, it's been easy for me to just watch from home. And there were some things about the game on Sunday where there was no replay. And I know in the Panthers press box, they do have the replay from the TV broadcast, but I like to pause things and kind of go back and watch it. So it was a different experience for me just trying to digest the game. But being able to go in and talk to the guys in the locker room afterwards and be at the press conference, I definitely do think that helped me as far as doing the show live. And if I'm able to kind of find a quiet area like I did once stayed and cleared out there in Munich, I may keep doing it. I certainly want to go to the Chiefs game. Pat Mahomes is coming to town, kind of hard to pass up that opportunity. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. But it was really fun. And I did have somebody in the live chat who was mad because I wasn't wearing Panthers gear. I'm just going to give you a heads up because I don't know if you were aware of this, but when you sit on press row, you don't wear team paraphernalia unless you work for the team. So like the Panthers PR staff was sitting behind me wearing Panthers gear because they work for the team. Joe Person, Mike Kay, me, Chris Jenkins, none of us were wearing Panthers gear because we cover the team. Like it's highly unprofessional to sit on press row and to root for a team or to go out there and to be wearing the gear. So yeah, you're not going to see me do that. I wore the suit, man. I'm going to wear the suit anytime I go to a game because that's what professionals do. But as far as the bye week, I don't even know where I'm going with this, other than really enjoyed Munich and just wanted to get that one off my chest because there's always someone complaining about something that is just so nonsensical. But does it come at a good time? Mike Solarte of Spectrum News asked that to Dave Canales, and he said, good question. He mentioned that they got guys like Jordan Fuller back and DJ Woonem on Sunday, and that really helped. as far as communication back in the secondary. And I got to talk to Jordan Fuller and Dane Jackson. Both those guys had lockers next to each other. And I was just talking to both of them, kind of just ping-ponging it and asking them just how they feel the secondary is moving forward now that they have JC, Mike Jackson, Dane Jackson, Xavier, and Jordan back. And they're ecstatic. And those are two guys who have dealt with hamstrings. One thing I wish I would have asked them is, like, how is everybody in this team having a hamstring issue? How does that happen? But to get those guys back now, you have Adam Thielen, who should probably be coming back after the bye. Amari Barno, who apparently is close to coming back. Jaden Crumedy is close to making his debut. Defensively, at least, this team is getting healthier. Again, Horn, Jackson, Woods, and Fuller, for the first time this season, played together in a game in the secondary as starters. But I think just in general, first time they played together, that five. And JC had talked about how you got to have chemistry. And I think Ashawn Robinson and Josie Jewell both talked about in the press conference as well, just about how this defense is starting to understand each other more, as you've had just guys miss so much time. Like Ashawn's missed, I think, one game. Josie missed about 3 games during the middle of the season. When you don't have guys out there healthy, you're missing, of course, Shaq Thompson and Derek Brown. Yeah, they've been in the scheme before, but have they always been in the scheme with the guys who are on the roster? Maybe some of their former teammates from LA or in Denver, but they haven't all been together in this scheme together during a season. And that obviously plays a major role to their success or their lack of success. I still question the overall talent level of this defense. Did I think it was going to be the worst defense in the NFL? No. Did I think it was going to be a top half defense in the NFL? No. But what we saw on Sunday, especially against a team that it was another one of those movable object, stoppable forces situations, the stoppable force was very stoppable against that movable object in the Carolina Panthers. When we saw that in Denver, that was not the case. This team's now healthier, and they're only going to get healthier as far as coming off the bye. And if they can stay healthy in the final 7 games, they got a chance to really carry some potential momentum to the next season. Now, you're going to lose a lot of guys. I don't know how fair it is to say momentum carries over from season to season, but then you look at the Detroit Lions and what they've carried over since that 2022 season and where they are now, in my opinion, the best team in the NFL. Don't care if Kansas City is undefeated and keeps getting by. The best team in the league, in my opinion, is the Detroit Lions. When you look at it, like KC, that team, obviously good. I don't think anybody is going to think that Carolina's going to win that football game, even if the Panthers are feeling good about themselves, winning back-to-back games coming off that bye. But when I look at it, KC, they're only 5th as far as point differential in the AFC. They're behind Buffalo. They're behind Baltimore. They're behind Pittsburgh. They're even behind a team that's 3 games behind them in their own division in the LA Chargers. I don't know. I'm just – it's Mahomes. It's Reed. It's that defense. It's hard to bet against them long-term, of course, at least long-term this season. I don't know. It's the NFL any given Sunday, right? And my eyebrows raised. Has been all season long. They only have the 9th best point differential in the NFL, period. So I don't know how good Kansas City actually is. They may be 8-0 or whatever the hell it is, 10-0. I can't keep track of it. They're, I think, 9-0. I don't know why I said 8-0. Yeah, okay, they're undefeated, but it's not easy to do. Totally get it. Just sitting here, and I'm wondering, could it happen? Maybe. Tampa, they've lost 4 in a row. They're just not playing good football. They're banged up, and that's a home game for Carolina. At Philly, that's going to be tough, of course. Dallas is not nearly as tough as you thought it was going to be earlier in the season, as Dak is on IR, and it looks like Dak's not going to come back. I guess he would be eligible to come back for that game, but I don't feel like Dak will be back for that. Arizona, they're a division leader, and they're a lot better. Like, beginning of the season, you looked at those games, you thought, okay, Arizona would be the game in the second half of the season for Carolina post-bye that the Panthers have to get, especially at home. At Tampa again, at Atlanta, I can see them. They can play with Tampa. They can play with Dallas. And, Arizona, they can play with them probably too in Atlanta. So I can see them getting 3 games. They can finish this out by winning the 3 of the last 7, going 3-4 there. And when you stretch it out to the last 2 games, finishing the final 9 games of the season, really, I guess the final second half there at 5-4, that's positive momentum, in my opinion, heading into next season. And the hope, too, is that defensively, guys stay healthy. Maybe there's some guys you want to bring back for next year. And, of course, the quarterback situation, if it is Bryce Young, who can help lead you to kind of that 5-4 finish across the final 9 games of the season, that may be enough to get him to come back next year as starting quarterback. We'll see. So does it come to at a good time? I think yes. You played 10 straight games. You're coming back from Europe. But maybe even no, just because of the momentum and the positive vibes. I just think they're only going to be healthier and they're going to be in a better mindset heading into the final 7 games now that they do get that bye week. So I'm excited to see what they can do the final 7 games. Still not the best team in the world, as I understand. Not sitting here and saying all of a sudden that maybe Farmers Market season's over. There's Farmers Market on Sunday because there's no game. But maybe next Sunday against Kansas City, maybe stay home and stay. So we'll see. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network here. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council. Again, y'all, thanks for watching on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Subscribe on both of those locations. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter, at Julian Council, where tomorrow on Wednesday, I'll be back answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me on Twitter, at Julian Council, to get those questions in. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole, as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.